somebody who is skilled in speaking, somebody who is skilled in maybe running, somebody who is skilled in cooking. What skill do I have? You can have a list and a myriad of skills in your portfolio. So most of us have more than what, 1, 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 7 or 8 skills. Because when you enter into a circumstance in life, most of the time those circumstances will demand different expressions of skills we have. Most of the times when it is difficult for us to solve problems in particular circumstances, just because sometimes we're not skilled in that area. So the first question you want to ask yourself, what skill do I have? And one of the things you have to understand is a skill is actually a compound interpretation or expression of a call and a gift. Everybody has a call and everybody has a gift or gifts. I normally say that the gift unpacks the call and the skill unpacks the gift. We have a call or an assignment or a purpose or a vision. People have different names for those things, but the wired into the call is gifts, and then wired into those gifts is what? Skills. So if you want to express clearly or distinctly the call and the gifts you have to have skills, and skills are designed to be compound expressors of what? Of callings and gifts. So identify what skill do I have, and I begin to understand that every skill you have actually is unpacking a gift, or is unpacking a call you have. And the law of the earth demands or responds to skills. So on the earth we have to sort of like make demands upon skills or express ourselves through skills. So what skill do you have? Point number one. Second thing you have to understand about mastery of skills is you have to define the skill spectrum. Define the skill spectrum. Now, what is a spectrum? A spectrum is a range or a continuum, a continuous sequence, a range, or a bit that space between boundaries. So every skill has a spectrum, and most of the time we only sort of like study skills or engage in skills up to a particular point. I can almost bet that if your skill set has a range of 1 to 10, most of us most likely are at 2 or at 3 if we are lucky. Because what normally happens in human beings are beings of habit. So once I have understood just a little bit of the skill to make me going, to make me enter into a space, we get comfortable. It's very rare to find, unless you're under supervision, that somebody begins to explore the skill beyond a particular point. Most of us are comfortable at point 2 or point 3. Some people who are at point 5 look like masters to people who are at point 2. So if you have a skill set and the skill set has been developed only up to point 3, and you find somebody who has developed that skill set to point 7, you'll be impressed. You'll be impressed by this person. You'll be saying this person is a master of this skill. If that person meets somebody who has developed that skill to point 10, they'll be saying this person is really a master of this skill. So you have to understand, skill sets normally have a spectrum. So you have to sit down and begin exploring what is the spectrum of my skill set. If I'm a writer, what is the spectrum of the skill set I have? Maybe if I'm specifically a writer for children's literature, what is the spectrum of the skill set that I have? Once you understand the spectrum of the skill set which you have, you begin to see how that skill can be exploited. Most of us want to master skills, but we don't understand the spectrum of the skill. If the skill set is at 1 to 10, you have to explore that spectrum and see the possibilities of understanding or internalizing the usefulness of that skill within the boundaries of that spectrum. So a skill is exploited, or a skill is mastered within the framework of its spectrum. What does that spectrum do to us? When you say a spectrum of a skill set, it means the skill set can be measurable. It means you can able to say so and so is doing better than so and so as far as this specific skill is concerned, because it begins to entertain two concepts called quantity and quality. Now, for you to be able to master a skill in the dimension of a spectrum, then it means quantity has to happen. You have to begin to do something called discipline, and discipline is actually when we begin to put more time in the mastery of the skill with reference to the spectrum of the skill. So discipline. How regular am I using, or how regular am I internalizing the skill I have? That's quantity. But also you have to kick it into a place called quality. Quantity is time, quantity is broad, quality is depth. So most of us sometimes we put what? We put more time in a skill, but we don't invest in the depth of the skill. So we have continually used it, but not necessarily continually used it deeply, if you could say so. So the quantitative and the qualitative part of a skill, what it does is it makes us internalize. And that internalization is what we call discipline. Become disciplined in a particular kind of skill set. And that discipline makes the skill be personalized. So you can say, I have mastered this skill, if you could say so. And obviously you shall see, if you put in quantity and put in quality, it points us towards something called time. So time has to be invested, discipline has to be there, the skill set has to be measurable. When it's measurable, you know what time do I need to put in every other day to master it, or how deep should I go next time, and then you know how much the discipline becomes meaningful. The discipline is never really something sweet, but once you have measured the skill set spectrum, it begins to become more meaningful. It becomes what I normally call, in a jocular way, meaningful thing. And then what happens is this: when you begin to understand the spectrum of the skill set, you begin to discipline yourself and put in more time. You begin to move from quantity of investment of that skill to quality of investment of that skill. You will reach a point when you are ready to break into the creative exploitation of that skill. Most people are not creative in their skill set because they have never understood the spectrum of their skill to the point where they can begin to go beyond what everybody else is doing in the area or in the arena of their skill set. So creativity actually begins to kick in when time, discipline, and measure have been put in, and you begin to realize there are boundaries that you can begin to adventurously want to do it, to go beyond. So point number one, identify a skill. Point number two, identify the spectrum of the skill. And the last part, mastery of the skill. Mastery is almost what I could call the spiritual side of a skill. The spiritual side of a skill. What does mastery do? What mastery makes the skill easy, number one. And secondly, what mastery does, mastery makes the skill simple. So actually, I am of the notion that when you're beginning a skill, it's complicated. When you begin to master the skill, it becomes easier. When you see a swordsman wielding his sword, or a penman writing a novel or a composition or a speech, and they have been at it for the longest time, they make it easy. And the reason why we get sort of like enchanted or attracted to the expression of the simplicity of a skill is because somebody has mastered it. Somebody has just put in what? Has measured, put in time and disciplined himself. So mastery makes it easy, mastery makes it simple. Mastery makes us move from the quantitative use of the skill to the qualitative use of the skill. Now we go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the skill. So another thing that mastery does, mastery is economical. What do I mean by when I say mastery is economical? What mastery does when it comes to skills, it saves time. So a person who has mastered a particular skill can do a task in a very short time. Why? Because he has mastered it. And secondly, what mastery does, it makes it precise. There's a precision. There are places where somebody accurately puts or engineers or expresses that skill to fulfill a particular task at hand. Mastery is also makes us what we call adept. And because we are adept at a particular skill, we are also adaptive. It is very when a curve is thrown in the context of solving a problem using the skill set we have, because we are adept at the skill we have, we can adapt. You can only adapt when you are adept, if you could say so. I mean, that's very poetic. You can only adapt if you are adept. So mastery saves time, mastery is precise, mastery makes us adept, and because we are adept, we can adapt. So just those three simple things about mastery of a skill. Number one, identify the skill you have. Number two, measure the skill spectrum you have. The skill spectrum you have will make it measurable. It will make you understand the time and the discipline you have to put in. And then go to the third point, you'll begin to enter into the dimension of mastering the skill. When you enter into the mastery of the skill, you're actually going to a point you're becoming the skill becomes spiritual, if you could say so. It makes you save time, it makes you become precise, it makes you become adept. That, for now, is what I can explain to you about mastery of skill. But next time we shall talk more about it, because this is a very broad subject. 3 little things about mastery of a skill. Thank you very much. My name is David.